In this video, we're going to go through the different steps to create your film using artificial intelligence. As you can see on the screen, there are 6 main steps to create your film. We'll start by looking at them together, and with John's help, how to write a good script and a strong story. That's the key to your film. You can have the most beautiful images in the world, but if there's no story, your chances of winning drop significantly. So it's important that you spend time thinking about the script. I'm going to really emphasize that. The second part is image generation. So for that, you'll see, I'll go into a bit more detail in this video, but you'll also have dedicated tutorials that will follow in separate videos. After that, you'll edit the images in the form of a storyboard using the editing software. It won't be animated yet, it won't be in video form. But it's an important step, because once you've created your entire sequence of images, it becomes quite quick to make the videos. On top of that, the images, in terms of credits, meaning the cost of creating them, it's much cheaper to make the images first and then move on to the videos. So, we strongly encourage you to speak with a mentor once your entire image structure is properly set up. Step by step. But you'll understand as you go through the process. So, after the images, you've seen a mentor, and then, from those images, we're going to generate videos. And here, you'll see, it's truly magical. We start to see the film taking shape. I'll also give you a step on sound. How to generate sound using artificial intelligence, sound effects, how to use your own voice and apply filters over it if you want to animate the characters. So, we'll have a dedicated video for that. And then, the editing, which you'll see in another video, and the final submission, with all the rules to follow, which are different from last year. We'll start with the script and the storyboard. So, before you dive straight into the rest of this video, know that John Rabot, who is a filmmaker, has made a great video that really explains the different steps in the professional world of cinema, what makes a good script, what makes a good story, and how to build your storyboard. What I'm going to show you on screen is meant to be additional information, and it will serve as a bridge between the world of traditional cinema and artificial intelligence. We absolutely don't intend to compete with traditional cinema, we're not working in the same formats. But you'll see that we can still borrow certain techniques from classic cinema to help us and to be able to use these structures in terms of prompts. So, what is this prompt I'm talking about? You'll see, it's the text you'll write, which will be used to generate an image. Basically, when you say, for example, like in this image, I want a camera taking a beautiful sunset photo, well, that's the text you'll type. So, every time you hear me talk about a prompt, you'll know. That's what I'm referring to. So, the scenario. I'll summarize the steps of the scenario as I see them, but John, once again, is much more of an expert than I am to talk to you about it. First, you choose a theme you like, think about your story, and find the message you want to convey. Next, you write out the progression of your story. You can use ChatGPT to help, and I'll show you how in a video. How to make it easier for ChatGPT to assist you. But nothing will ever replace human intelligence when it comes to finding an idea that really stands out from the rest. And then, how to draw your storyboard. John talks about it in more detail in his video, but I'm going to show you exactly what it looks like if you have to take a sheet of paper and draw it. So, your storyboard starts with the title. The title is the name you want to give it. That can come later, you can fill it in afterwards, but in any case, you can also write down the general idea you have for your film. Then you'll draw large rectangles in which you'll sketch by hand. You'll number all these rectangles. And inside, you'll make drawings that are more or less well done. And I start writing the idea for the script that I might have. So, we're in a jungle with a river. Suddenly, the lemur and its little baby turn around, they hear a noise. And then, we see a zoom on a lorry. At this stage, what's going to be important is to specify everything you want to include. So you'll need to spend a bit of time filling out this entire document. This document will be made available online to help you think things through. Why am I insisting on this? Because in fact, these elements, and John explains this very well in his video, will help us create our prompt, so we can generate our image and maintain consistency, meaning a coherent style throughout. So, you'll start by entering the value of the shot. Are we looking at a wide shot or a close-up? So here, for example, we're more likely dealing with a wide shot, like of a forest. Is it a front view, a top-down view? I'll talk a bit more about that just below. The location, where is it taking place? Are we in a jungle, a forest? Are we in a kitchen? Are we in space? Next, who are the characters and what objects are there? How are they dressed? How can we describe them? You'll see in the image generation video, I use the example of a lemur, which I always describe in the same way. I often say it's a lemur with yellow eyes, a long tail, animation style, 3D. The character's emotion, if you don't specify anything, it will always generate a character who looks happy and maybe silly. So, really take the time to think about what emotion is being experienced. Do you want to convey a particular message through this image? Also consider the time of day. Is it early in the day, midday, or nighttime? Because that will have a big impact in terms of colors and lighting. If you don't specify anything, it will often default to the middle of the day. And again, that can feel a bit flat. So you can absolutely have a video showing different times of day. You can actually see the colors changing. It can be quite nice. Colors aren't just about the time of day, but also about your color palette. So I'll come back to in a bit. It's typically going to be like, well, for our festival, we chose pink-purple colors because those are the colors associated with AI. What about you? Are you going to have a specific brand identity in that regard? I briefly mentioned style, but are we talking about images that are animated, 3D, or more photographic, etc.? Camera movement. Here, when I look at this, for example, should I do a zoom in on my jungle for the video, like a drone zooming in on the lemur? Or on the contrary, are we using a drone camera flying away? Or is it more of a static shot with the camera just panning to the side? What do you want to do? And then the focal length. It's the depth effect, the type of camera lens you would have used. So we'll talk more about that a bit later. To show you the art of prompting, I'm going to use exactly the elements I just showed you, but often this is how it's structured. I always start my prompts with the camera angle. I'll say, for example, zoom in, a close-up view, or an aerial view, a high-angle shot. So, what is the camera angle? Then, in the prompt, you'll see that I've put either the location or the character next. Generally, you start with the element you want to appear first. If, for example, we go back to the two images I had, in the first image, I would start by saying the jungle with the river. During the day, on a hot summer day. Whereas for the second image, which we saw a bit earlier, I would have said the lemur with its baby in a forest. So, when prompting, you should always start with the most important element. The trick is that when you're filling in this little template, you can absolutely choose to put a number in front, the one that seems most important to you. In any case, don't worry. You'll see when you generate the images that if it doesn't work, you'll just need to change the order in which you placed your words. So, who is the subject? The details, yes, like how they're dressed, will help us maintain the coherence of the image. And then the mood, what is the emotion? We talked about it, it's important if you don't want the images to be too cheesy. Then, in the middle of the prompt generally, you include the style and lighting, and then the color palette, and optionally the type of camera. So you see here, we've filled that in for the three images. And we're going to have to do it a number of times. So I really encourage you to either print out the sheet or just draw some boxes. Because just think, every time you generate an image with artificial intelligence, it'll give you roughly 5 seconds of video. And so 5 seconds, if you go back to your framework, it'll look like this. So you see, first image, second image, that way you'll see it more clearly. Right, so I'm going to fill it in, and actually, I'm going to put between 12 and 24 images. That gives you roughly between 1 and 2 minutes of film. Now, you're not only going to use 5-second sequences, sometimes you'll have ones that are a bit shorter, but to keep things dynamic, in the end, it's quite good to have between 12 and 24 images. So it can really help you in terms of coherence, your script, your storyboard. And you'll see that even before moving on to the videos, you'll actually be asked to place all those images you generated with artificial intelligence in sequence on the modeling software. Now that we've looked at the script and the storyboard, we're going to go a bit more in depth into image styles. To guide you, because I've mentioned it to you, but I'd like you to see a bit more concretely what it actually looks like. So, the photo style, I think you get it. It's like taking a picture with your phone and wanting to make a film or a video game that's very realistic. Well, in that case, you'd use the photography style. You could even specify the type of camera you want to use. So, are we talking about a Kodak, a Canon with an X-millimeter lens? Why? Because that will really give a specific image style. You can choose slightly vintage cameras to make it look like a film shot in the 80s. You can go for a style with a professional zoom, or on the contrary, something like an iPhone or smartphone to give your film and images a distinct identity. There's also the cinematic science fiction style. So that's the whole universe you'll find around fantasy or science fiction. I think you're familiar with quite a few styles. When you will prompt, you'll say science fiction style or cinematic style. And you'll be able to add that into your prompt. You can also go for a 3D animation style. This is what I use for my lemurs. So you see that there are different, then, subcategories of style, depending on how you prompt it with. The different tools we show you will give you different results. But for that, I suggest you check out my demo video specifically on image generation. You can also go for the 2D cartoon style. 2D cartoon is like comic book style. And it's a style that can also be quite nice. You can also go for the flat illustration style, which means really flat illustrations. The difference with 3D is that the characters will be a bit less flexible, but it can still be a style. You can also go for a claymation style or manga style. So, keep in mind that you still need to respect your country's culture. You can absolutely go for a manga style. We call it anime. When you animate the images using different software. And as I'm showing you in the photos, that doesn't stop you from placing manga characters at the beach or in various settings. You can go for a watercolor style. In fact, the range of possibilities and styles is endless when it comes to creativity. There's quite a wide field of possibilities. I'll include a link to this video for you, as well, a style library, which is for a software called Midjourney, which we won't be using. But it will give you access to a really comprehensive library of existing styles that you can reference in your prompt by writing, as I mentioned, style watercolor, style photographic, and so on. Let's now take a look together at the different camera angles that can be used in terms of camera angles. And this can really inspire you when creating your storyboard and later on during the making of your film. As I was saying earlier, actually, if you don't specify the camera angle when you write your prompt to generate your image, what usually happens is that you'll get what's called a centered view. It's a view that can convey messages, but it's not very interesting, especially if you show it all the time. So, it's in your best interest to vary it. So that's the centered view, and you'll be able to find it again. We'll also include it in the downloadable documents if you just want to refer back to the examples. Over the shoulder view, what you can see is that it's shown over their shoulder, so they're looking at you from a 3/4 angle over the shoulder. Shoulder, that means shoulder. Side view means you're seeing them from the side. 3/4 view is when you see them turning around. It's not far off from the shoulder view. Shoulder view, but from a bit further away. And then the back view. Now, what's important for the back view is not to describe what the face looks like from the front. Because if you say that we see her from the back, but she has beautiful blue eyes, the AI will feel compelled to show you her eyes. Blue. Camera shot. We saw it briefly earlier on our storyboards. How far is your subject? Remember to vary between close-up and wide shots. And which part of your subject do you want to highlight? We always start with that. Often, what we see is that we get shots that go from the top of the head down to about the middle of the torso. If you don't specify, that's what you'll see in almost every image. The way to push and force the AI to go lower is to specify a detail you want to see. You see, in my prompt, for example, I said I wanted her to have a blue skirt. And so, that forces the camera to move down. And then, if I specify that she's wearing trainers of a certain color, that will also force it to go lower. And if you're really struggling to get a full body view, in that case, you can double or triple certain words. You'll do that on certain generations. As I was saying, weight is important. So, if you triple or quadruple certain words, it'll think, hang on, he mentioned shoes, white trainers, 3 times, so that must mean it's important. And in this case, to get that image, I had to say it 3 times. Because, especially with the anime style, it tends to go for quite close-up shots. So I really emphasize that point, we talked about it earlier. But it's important to start your prompt with what seems most important to you. It's exactly the same prompt, but I changed the order of the words. If I start by saying it's a close-up of a pretty Mauritian teenage girl, it will begin with the girl. If I start by saying it's a beautiful beach with turquoise water and in the distance, I see a young girl, you can see that the view is completely different. Now, in terms of different angles, you can see that we can really tell a different story. You can also easily imagine the camera approaches that could be used. So here, I've put a satellite view of Mauritius. So, it doesn't quite look like Mauritius, but that's all right. We're working within an imagined setting. Conversely, you can see that in the image on the right, we have a view from below. So, to force the camera to move upwards, you can describe what you see. So you'll say, I see a photo from underneath the palm tree. I see red flowers, I see clouds and birds in the sky. And that will really force it to look upwards. And sometimes, you might also encounter censorship. For the demonstration, I had asked for the same shot from below, but obviously, it thought, well, looking under the girls' skirts that's not allowed, so it blocked the content, and it was right, because I hadn't thought it might generate that. But you can see that we still have some really interesting shots to work with, so you can take inspiration from that. This one is a high-angle shot, seen from above with a wide angle, and then, for the dog, a shot from below. Don't worry, it's in English, but I'll show you exactly how to translate everything from French to English in the image generation tutorial. And then the colors, that's important, because if you don't finish off your colors, you'll end up with the same colors as everyone else. And it'll be lacking a bit of charm. The greatest filmmakers often choose specific colors, sometimes it's just 2 or 3. There are some really great films made with that in mind, and you can check on YouTube. There are loads of demo videos that show you the DNA of films based on their color schemes. I've included a few for you. They're AI-generated images, so you can use them as inspiration. Here, we're looking at warm tones, with saturated colors and golden hues. This leans more towards an epic, heroic universe. Like in the big films you'll see, where they talk about great heroes, think gladiators in the opening scenes. Here, straight away, you can see the atmosphere is different. It feels mysterious, adventurous. Now we're dealing with blue-green tones. These are colors. Neon shades, which you often find in everything futuristic, and also, as I mentioned, in AI. They evoke a sense of excitement, modernity, futurism, and so on. So this is really a brand identity you can develop. You can also work with slightly pastel colors, which gives us softer scenes, whether it's here or with sunset scenes. You can also use desaturated colors with a lot of contrast. Now, here we're more in the realm of the solitary figure facing the vastness of the elements. So there you go, depending on the message you want to convey, really work on your colors. We didn't see it much last year, unfortunately, but it can make a real difference. Right, now that we've gone through all these techniques, I imagine you're eager to start generating your own images. For that, there's a dedicated tutorial. But since I know you might be in a hurry, I'll just show you the websites and the really basic info in short so you can get a first look. The 2 image generators will mainly be using our Leonardo AI and CRE AI. If you type those into the internet, you'll find them. I show others in my videos. You're free to try out several. I'll quickly show you how it works. Once again, go check out the dedicated tutorial. It's a bit longer, but it'll help you get to grips with the tool quickly. So, when I'm here, quickly, I type in CRE AI. You need to register. In any case, I'll show you the steps. How to do it is in the other video. You go to Images. Here, very important, I've told you loads of times in the other video, but you click on 16:9 and then you write a description. So, for example, a cute little lemur. Here, I'm only putting that because actually there's a dedicated video that explains it in more detail. That way, you can see what it looks like. If I add 3D animation, you can see that it changes as well. You'll have the step-by-step guide to help you. Keep in mind that your storyboard will help you, since you'll be able to refer back to all the informations. Put into your storyboard, including the shots, angles, colors, and everything we've just gone over. And then you'll type it into the prompt, which is the line of text that will generate the image. There you go, and for the other tool, you type in Leonardo AI. You select that one. And it's more or less the same process. You log in. You log in, go to Images, and then you type the text, the walls, come on, minimum 3D, animation. These are the images we generated for the tutorial. And what you see here is that it generated a Northwest lemur. There you go. So here, you'll get images that will appear and be generated. There, you see. I didn't say much, so it literally did a very simple lemur. Right, so we've looked together at image generation using the basics. Above all, don't hesitate to check out the other tools I mention in the dedicated video. And I might also give you some more links to tools, since new ones are released regularly. We try to test them to see which ones are the most effective for you. Right, so now that we've generated our first images, what we're going to do is prepare our storyboard to show to the mentor. So here, I'm finishing up in CapCut. Roughly speaking, it's exactly the same as the storyboard you prepared. Except this time, we're going to take all the images you've generated and put them into a tool that will be useful to us, which is called CapCut. So for CapCut, you see, I type that into the search bar, CapCut. I'll show you a bit in the tutorial video about the images. I log in. Once I'm there, I click on Create New. So remember that you always need to choose 16:9 format. So that's what I'm going to select here. So here, I click on New Video. So when I open it, you can do this from your mobile phone or your computer. You either have the option to click on Upload, which means to import, or directly, if you're on a PC, you can go and find the images you're interested in. So you see, here, I'm going to take the images we created for the tutorial, and I'm going to copy them in there. They appear on the left, as you can see. And so here, they were added automatically. But here, that wasn't the case. So you see, I'm clicking delete, 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 delete. I'm showing you. They're there on the left. And actually, what I'm going to do is either click on them and that will add them. Or I can say, for example, it starts with the bananas. I'll take it and drag it to the beginning. There we go. And so, what's interesting is that if I press play, thank you, you'll see the images scroll through. So, automatically, it sets about 4 to 5 seconds per image. You'll end up with an edit that actually looks like your storyboard. Here, you see, I have the plus and minus bar which allows me to zoom in or out. And so, that will be the first step you can take, which will allow you to then show it to a mentor. And just with these images, we'll already be able to start seeing a story take shape. So, here, it's not a very well-developed story, but it's just to give you a glimpse of what could happen. And then afterwards, we'll add the music on top and we'll also add the videos once they've been product. But this will allow you to rethink what kind of camera movement you want. So we've looked together at how you're going to start preparing your storyboard, because the next step is to discuss it with a mentor. This mentor isn't necessarily someone from our team. It could be a friend, a parent, a brother or sister, or someone from your neighborhood. It could be the local team from our partners. It could also be, on our website, we'll be updating time slots for mentors who will be available. But keep in mind that the mentor's role is to give you feedback on the creation of your images, because we understand your story by looking at these initial image sequences. And you'll be able to ask questions. You'll be able to get support, and if you run into any technical issues, you can bring them up. But above all, this step is important before diving in headfirst. In the video, quite simply because you'll see that video credits get used up very, very quickly. If you started making the video straight away after generating images, you might have used up credits for nothing. if we didn't understand your story from the start or if you wanted to change it. So here, the mentor will give you a supportive perspective to guide you and say, I think your idea is great, or I think it's too complex for such a short time frame. Or they might ask, have you thought about doing this or that? And this step is important. Whether you do it with someone close to you or with a mentor from the AI for Good Festival. Quite simply because it's a moment to pause and take a step back from our creation. Before we move on to the video and generation part. Once you've gone through that with the mentor, I know you'll be really eager to go and try out the video. For that, we'll be publishing a tutorial on the topic in a few days. The tool we're going to recommend is HILUO Video. It's also called Minimax. But there's something important you should know. When you create your account on HILUO, you'll get 3 days with loads and loads of credits. And after those 3 days, well, you'll have access to daily credits. So, those credits you get in bulk when you first log in, and that's great. Because since it's on the free model, it would be a shame not to use them wisely. Which means that if you're too impatient and haven't finished your storyboard, you'll end up stuck. Quite simply because you won't have been able to make full use of all your credits. And you'll be forced to wait for new generations each day. So, I advise you to wait and have your storyboard properly structured before actually starting to turn your images into videos. If your images are well made, it will actually go quite quickly. You'll just need a few days to generate the videos, but it can still go fairly fast. So be patient, work first on your story, the script, and also work on your images. And once that's done, then we'll move on to the video. I've got a full tutorial dedicated to it, packed with tips, including exactly how to do camera movements. And that tutorial is coming soon, so just a bit of patience. But make sure you work on your story properly, it's important. So, we've gone over the script together, and now it's really important that you work on your story. Your storyboard, the message you want to convey, the visuals, we're going to look together at all the technical aspects you need to think about and consider. You show these visuals in CapCut and you'll get someone from your environment or a mentor to give you feedback. From these visuals, you create videos, and you'll be able to import those videos into CapCut in place of your images. So it's very easy, you just need to transfer, you can see it in the video. And then, the sound. So, for the tools we're going to use, but again, don't hesitate to check out the dedicated tutorial. We'll be using Suno.com, Audio.com, and for all sound effects, we'll use Pixabay.com. Bear in mind that in CapCut, you also have the option to add special effects in terms of sound. And you can also do voiceovers, that means you can speak over a character's voice, even though you don't have speaking rights in the context of the film, but you can do little sound effects. Like the Minions. And here, you'll be able to add a filter to give your voice a bit of punch and make it sound like different characters. Again, I encourage you to go and check all of that out. And then, the final step will be editing the video before sending it off. So we'll do that on CapCut, as you saw a bit earlier. Basically, we're going to follow the same principle. Take the images, then the videos, add the music, and then cut and assemble everything together. It's quite intuitive, so it works pretty well. And there'll be a tutorial on that, especially if you have any questions, don't hesitate. I think we've covered everything together. So, we went through the script, which is an important part, and the images, taking a moment to check if they're right. And that matches the whole identity you want to work on. We generate the videos, add the sound, and edit it all in CapCut. And then, the final step will be sending it off. So, there will be specific instructions for you to follow, which will be published later. In those, we'll explain how to add a title to your film, your candidate number, and also how to include the logos of the sponsors supporting you, whether locally or internationally. All of that will be clearly explained in another video. Good luck, and we're here if you have any questions. Festival.